Republican Party, and I want to welcome everybody to our Congressional District 4 Forum. So let's go ahead and start this, first of all, with a moment of prayer. Please remove your hats. Stand if you can. If you can't, that's fine. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings of our liberty. We thank you for blessing us with all of our rights. We know, God, Father, that you have granted those rights and bestowed them upon us. Thank you for the blessings upon our nation, and we ask that you continue to bless this nation. We pray, Heavenly Father, for the gentlemen that are up here participating in the forum, and we pray for all of the attendees present. We also pray for the American hostages that are still being held by the Palestinian terrorists, and we pray for their safe return. We also pray for our country, and we thank you, Heavenly Father, for the gift of our Constitution guaranteeing the rights that we so cherish. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for the gift of the salvation from your Son, the sacrifice that he made on the cross and his resurrection, which has assured our salvation into heaven, because we know that it is only through the gift of Christ's love that we are granted that salvation. We ask you, Heavenly Father, to bless us, and we thank you in Christ's name. Amen. Let us all salute. Attention, salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. I want to also thank Go Church for giving us the opportunity to meet here. I want to thank my treasurer and the forum director, Richard Tortorello. I want to thank everybody also for attending. Here's Rashar right back here. I want to also thank Robert Castleberry for agreeing to moderate this evening. We understand that there's a very important event happening tonight. These Oklahoma ladies softball team are playing a national championship game tonight, and that's probably why we've got such low attendance, you know, because we Okies, we love our sports, right? Hoorah. So I want to go over the rules of the forum before we get started. There are rules for the attendees and there are rules for the candidates up here. The rules for the attendees. We ask that everybody respect the facility this evening. We ask that everybody respect the process and respect this forum. Please do not heckle or engage in any outbursts. If you do so, you will be asked to kindly leave. So if you would like to have a discussion with one of the candidates, please feel free to do so afterward. They would be happy to provide you with their contact information, webpage, or whatever. You're more than welcome to stick around and have conversations with them. I'm sure that they would love to answer some of your questions. These are the forum rules for the candidates. Each candidate will be given equal time to present their views on each question. These are all open-ended questions. There are no gotcha questions. Please do not make reference to any of the other candidates in your responses. Interruptions of other candidates will not be permitted and is not tolerated. Personal attacks on other candidates are strongly prohibited, so please do not call out any of the other candidates. Candidates must adhere to the time limit set for opening statements, responses, and closing statements. Right over here is our timekeeper, and she will raise up this red folder right here when you are at 10 seconds. And then at 5 seconds, she will begin a countdown with her fingers to let you know that your time is near its end. Please contact me with any issues or concerns. This event is organized by the Cleveland County Republican Party, and I do want to express sincere gratitude to the hardworking members of our committees that are present this evening. Thank you so much. Let us now, and now I'm going to refer this over to our moderator, Mr. Robert Castleberry.
Thank you, Gary. Like I said, we have a national championship game tonight, so we will stay on schedule and we will leave at 8:30 so we can see the last couple innings, or if they rule them earlier, then we can stay a little bit later. But I appreciate you guys being here. And so, like I said, we're going to start with some opening comments here. I just want to reiterate, this is not a debate. This is a forum, okay? And so we basically want to get the point across to the audience of why they should vote for you, not against somebody else. So let's kind of keep those in mind as we go through the process. So we're going to start out with the first couple questions of kind of, not softball questions, but getting to know you. So the first question, and we'll start, opening statements. We'll start with opening statements. Mr. Harris, you can go first. 3 minutes.
Mr. Meyer.
Good evening. My name is Rick Whiteberry Harris, and I'm from Oklahoma. I'm a Native American of the Kiowa tribe. I'm a retired physician. I was with the Indian Health Service for over 20 years. I retired in 2019. I'm running for Congress because of the problems that I feel that we've been having for the last, say, 15, 20 years. I'm a 3-term candidate. By that I mean I limit myself to 3 terms. I'm in the same age bracket, as our current congressman. So I have no intention of being around for 20 or 25 years. I think I consider myself as a transition candidate for that very reason. I think the Oklahoma and the Congress need some time to begin to assimilate the fact that we have to go down on these term limits, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5 terms. As far as I'm concerned, 3 is enough, but that's where I'm coming from. 3 is my limit. I don't like the idea of continuing with omnibus bills and minibus bills. I believe that those have basically funded everybody in the world other than our own selves. So I will not be voting for any omnibus bills. And that's about it for me.
Hey y'all, I'm Andrew Hayes. I'm from down the road in Lawton. I've lived there my whole life. I'm a 5th generation Okie like Tom Cole. But I went to school at OU. I didn't graduate. I guess I got sidetracked with life, and I did enlist and serve in the Oklahoma National Guard. I did that for 2 years, and I I run cattle down there in Lawton. We homeschool our 3 kids, and I farm. And I've been spending my time reading economics, history, political philosophy, and I've kind of become very knowledgeable in these things, and I see a lot of the troubles that we're in. I see where we've deviated from the Constitution. We have issues that nobody is talking about. The central bank, the Federal Reserve, that's one. The apportionment of representatives in the House. We used to have 1 representative for every 30,000 people, and today we have 1 representative for every 800,000 people, and that sounds more like an oligarchy than a republic to me. So those are a few of the reasons that I'm running. I also, with Ron Paul, I think that we can abolish the income tax. We can balance the budget. We can eliminate the unconstitutional agencies, those 3-letter alphabet soup agencies, from the ATF to the CIA to the Department of Education. Look and see Article 1, Section 8, what's their constitutional justification? And there isn't any. So they need to be abolished. And I bet we get into that and more in the forum. So thank you for having me, and I appreciate the conversation, the debate, and discussion with y'all. Just wrap it up there. Go ahead.
Mr. Bondar?
Good evening, everyone. Paul Bondar, Stonewall, Oklahoma. Nice to be here tonight with you all. The word for today, or the contemporary word for right now, I think that really resonates is the word trust. And I think if we sit back and ask ourselves, on many different levels, trust is so important. And I'm running because the government, for what it stands for right now, has lost my trust. And as I walk around and meet many people here, and it's been a wonderful election campaign, it's been one of the best experiences of my life, next to the birth of my children, meeting and marrying my wife. This has been tremendous. I see with other people the same issue. We've lost our trust in our government. We've lost our trust in our leaders. You know, it wasn't that long ago, and I think when I was a kid growing up, there was a lot of patriotism in this country. There was a lot of belief that, hey, we didn't always agree with everything, but when it was all said and done, we were still neighbors, friends, Americans. And we live in such a world right now that has so much factions and division, finger pointing, and it really is an us versus them mentality. And what we really need to do is we can't have our government be us against them. We can no longer tolerate or have a system where our government leaders look down upon us. Our government leaders don't think that we're good enough to engage in conversations. And so I think what we need to do is we need to radically get back down to old-fashioned values and abandon the radical values. And what I want to do is I want to restore trust among the people and have the government start serving the people. So as we go here along tonight, I'll touch more about that, but I'm just happy to be here. It's great to get to know so many of you, and well, let's hope the Sooners have a good win tonight. How about that? All right.
Mr. Hankins.
Hello, I'm Nick Hankins. I've lived in Oklahoma my whole life. Most of my family is several generations in Oklahoma as well. I've got a good life. I've got 2 kids, a wife. Life's great. At the same time, like many of you, I look at what the federal government's doing, and I realize, oh, they're trying to make this so bad that no one will have a good life. Even if you have one today, the actions they're taking are essentially aiming to undermine or destroy it. And so I ask myself, well, if I'm not willing to stand up and take on this challenge for this election, how could I ask anyone else? So that's why I've entered this race. And I don't do it just for myself. I do it for my children, because I know some of these things may not necessarily materialize in my lifetime, but I worry for my kids that the future will be unimaginably terrible compared to the America that we've grown up in. I tell my wife often, the reason the government doesn't solve these simple problems is because the minute they do, we're all going to stand around and say, hey, what about this other problem? And also, what are you doing up there? And so the more problems they can let persist and create, the less we have time to see what's really going on. And so my hope with my candidacy is that I can do something about those things. And I know I'll just be one vote, but if I can vote no, stopping just one thing, and believe me, I'll vote no on just about everything, then I'd like to help you out. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Mr. Chance?
All right. Well, I'm Scott Chance. I am privileged to represent Congressman Tom Cole, who is in D.C. working actually through the appropriations process currently, and working towards making sure that we do not have omnibus bills and getting those all out on time and forcing the Senate to do their job. And just, again, just privileged to be here with you all today. And Tom Cole, as Andrew said, is a fifth-generation Oklahoman with over 100 years of roots in the state on both his father's side and mother's side, and he is Oklahoma through and through. He's proud to be endorsed by President Donald Trump, not just for this election, not just for last election, but the last three elections going strong here. He's proud to also fight for the 13,000 farms and ranches that are in the district. And he was just endorsed by the Oklahoma Farm Bureau Ag PAC for his support for our farmers and ranchers that are out there doing everything they can to make sure that we're fed and the fiber for our clothes. And when it comes to standing up for our Second Amendment rights, Tom Cole was recently endorsed by the NRA with an A+ record on making sure that we protect those freedoms and the right to bear arms. And additionally, when it comes to the right to life, which is so important to so many of us in this room, Tom Cole has been honored with receiving a 100% rating and the endorsement from the National Right to Life, as well as from the Susan B. Anthony list. It's important that we have a champion there in D.C. that will work on the issues and the values for Oklahomans every single day, and Tom Cole has done that, and look forward to the rest of the conversation and forum. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll ask some questions. So we're going to kind of start out with have the audience get to know you, and then we'll talk about some more specific issues. So we'll start with Scott and work our way back this way first. What is your earliest Oklahoma political memory that impacted you? And you can, I guess you probably answer for Congressman Cole, but.
Yeah, I can answer on that as well. Yeah, so thank you for the question. As many of you would probably know, the congressman served as the executive director for the Oklahoma Republican Party, as well as served as the state chairman, and was there at the turn of the tide. And really, if there's anybody that has been more consequential to Republicans taking over our state capital as well as the federal positions from Democrats that had an over 100-year rule in the state, it is Tom Cole. Tom Cole has always been there for the conservative movement, always been there for the Republican Party. Worked for Ronald Reagan here while he was in this, when he was running for election both times. And there has been no better stalwart champion. And some of the fondest memories that he has are those races, getting those Republicans elected for the first time in this state. And he's always been advocating for the Republican Party. And even just as an anecdote here, when it comes to county parties that set up a get out the vote office or a campaign headquarters there to get Republicans elected, Tom Cole has been there every single time to make sure that those are supported and we get the vote out for Republicans across the district and across the state, and honestly, across the country, to make sure that we have the majorities that we need to govern. So, thank you.
All right, Ms. Jenkins, you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
This is, it was the same question for each one of you, but I know as people talk, you kind of forget what the question was, so I'm happy to repeat the question if
Yes,
need
if
to.
you don't mind.
Okay.
Could you repeat the
Oh, you
question?
betcha. I'm sorry. What is your earliest Oklahoma political memory that impacted you?
For politics in Oklahoma, I've been relatively content. You know, there's always things that we might like to change. One thing that I would say is that the brain drain for Oklahoma universities, like when people graduate, they oftentimes leave the state, was something that I saw as an issue that really needs to be addressed. There's a lot of bright minds. I've went to school with people, and the fact that so many of them are forced to leave the state to pursue careers. And I understand that there are limitations there, but it's definitely something that we continually need to strive to help make Oklahoma a place where businesses can succeed and want to operate in. Aside from that, it's all right. Solid save. Aside from that, it's mostly a lot of things I wish weren't happening, sadly. So voting for the lesser of two evils, or trying to take positions where the real solution is obscured or unavailable to you. So it might have led to me thinking that I wanted to run for office, is that, again, if you don't have the option to pick someone who's willing to represent your values or continually strive to find better solutions, then it's a big motivator for me. Thank you.
Mr. Barndar, what is your earliest Oklahoma political memory that impacted you?
Well, as I think most of you know, I'm new to Oklahoma, and I'm new to politics. So I don't have a long, lengthy career of distinguished political things that I can speak of. I worked in the private sector for over 22 years. I built a company from scratch. I took a lot of risk opening it up in 2008 and was able to, through a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck and some sweat, we were able to sell that company in 2021. The reason I think the reason for me when I look at the politics, I think most people are feeling the same way I feel, though. Things are not getting better, and things are getting worse. And when I'm looking at solutions for Oklahoma politics today, what I'm focused on is we have to somehow create prosperity. We're at a 15% poverty level in Oklahoma right now. It's gone up significantly. And I see a lot of people hurting in a number of different places. And that resonates with me because when I was a youngster growing up, my father was a policeman. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I helped my grandfather on the sod fields. And so I know what it's like to stretch a dollar personally. I know what it's like to not have things that you may want to have. And I see a lot of that in our society way worse than even what I had it. And I just think our government needs to do better. We need to expect more from our leaders. And our leaders need to make more of an effort to have responsiveness, communication, and throw the American people a bone once in a while. Make sure that we're taken care of. Make sure that the policies that we have are American first policies. Thank you.
Well, I remember the question, and I've been thinking about it. I'm trying to think back in history of if it was ever not the case that we had a uniparty. The left and the right, the D's and the R's, they're all voting the same way, whether it's at the state house level or at our nation's capital, where allegedly Republicans are voting against our First Amendment and our Fourth Amendment, and they're voting to spend money overseas. I'm happy to say that I don't know if it's my earliest memory. My family has always been somewhat active on the periphery at the local level for sheriffs and the city council. It's the same thing there. You've got people that act like they're fighting in front of everybody, and then you walk into a restaurant and you see them eating with each other, and it's like it's WWF, and it's all just a show. But my best memory is when I met my wife campaigning for Ron Paul in 2007, and that was pretty amazing. We met on the side of a road, and of course, we're all holding up Ron Paul signs, but I tell that story to some people and their jaw drops and everything, but there's a little bit more to it. So we met her, and she's a Ron Paul supporter, and so was I, and we've just always been passionate about fighting the uniparty every chance we get, and we named our oldest son Paul in my granddad's honor, but also to honor Ron Paul, and I think that might be about all that I have to say.
Well, when you're asking about one of the first memories, how it affected you, I'm afraid I might have one that you guys don't even know about. And when I was about 11, 12 years old, I would be in Mountain View. My grandfather had a farm there, Tully Angers Farm, and it used to be Tully Jersey Farm. And so, as I said, I was only about 11, 12 years old, but my grandparents would be having a discussion or a fight, not a fight because they were good Christians, but and they were unhappy with a politician named Richter. Now, I don't know if you guys remember who that was, but he was, I think he was a congressman. And Grandpa wanted the low taxes, and my grandma said she just wants them to leave everybody alone. And then they turned to me and said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I don't know, can I have a cookie?" And she said, "Okay, you can have a cookie." So that's my first memory of it. But all this time though, I've always wondered about how come I remembered that guy's name, Richter. And of course it's my name, Rick, but it was Richter. So I was wondering, I thought perhaps maybe somebody in here might know who that was. So at any rate, for me, the state is the most important part is in things like what we might discuss about with state issues, which is abortion and how people get health care. And so I think our politicians have kind of fallen the wayside on that. It's like they don't want to address it, whether, I think Republicans might do a little bit better job on it, but they really don't want to address it because we do need help with our health care because Sooner Select is having some difficulty. But thank you very much. That's all I want to have to say about that. She's giving me the fingers.
You hit the first timer there. All right, we'll start back with Mr. Hankins. So outside of running for Congress, what experience do you have in helping get Republicans elected in Oklahoma or leadership roles you have had in the past that will allow you to be an effective representative of Oklahoma in D.C.?
I don't have any traditional pedigree in that realm. However, I've been an independent thinker and challenging ideas, whether it's my own or the general consensus. My thought is that there's always a better approach. And you get diminishing returns, so you got to kind of find that sweet spot. But when there's an unaddressed issue or one that clearly needs some solution, we cannot say, well, it's only what we have or it will be worse. That there are trade-offs, but there are a lot of ways to do things better. As we've all seen, life has gotten a lot easier and more convenient in a lot of ways. But that is against the dogma of, oh, well, things are the way they are and they can only be worse. Unfortunately, I don't see that as the norm in politics. And I think that specifically for the federal government, even for our own state, we are a large enough place and population that we should be running some experiments on a limited scale to say, hey, is there a better way out there? And whether it's with Sooner Care, where you could split off part of that and say, okay, we're going to do it a different way, and then let the people decide. I don't think the government needs to dictate your actions or your choices. I think they should come up with the very best solutions they can and then let the people decide which they want. It's kind of a different approach, but it's one that I believe could be wildly advantageous, and maybe not in all realms, but in several. I think a lot of us would be happy if the government was trying to tell us less of what to do or what we have to do.
Mr. Barndar, yes.
So I've been in business for 22 years, and the thing that just is stark and obvious to me is our governments need to stop acting like agencies that people just go to, and they need to start acting like businesses that treat our citizens like customers. Our government has such a level of indifference, and we can do better. We need to do better. I'll give you an example of an idea I have. I believe we have 3 field offices here in this district, right? One in Norman, Lawton, and I think the other one might be Ardmore. What we need to do is we need to have, I'm hearing situations where folks are looking for things to get addressed. I just met with a fellow that was in the Air Force, and he injured his leg, and he ended up, through a process of a bad surgery, losing his leg. He had some serious issues that he needed to get addressed, and he wasn't getting them addressed. And I think what we need to do is have accountability in our government. So the first thing that I would be wanting to do is examine our field offices, examine how we interact with the public, so that the experience that they get is one where, when I ran a business, I said, if we don't serve the customer, somebody else will. The problem with government is it's kind of a monopoly. There's a level of indifference, and it's like, oh, well, take it or leave it. This isn't right. It's time we start treating the taxpayers with some respect. The taxpayers are the boss. Thank you.
And what's the question?
Okay, yes. Outside of running for Congress, what experience do you have in helping get Republicans elected to Oklahoma, or leadership roles you've had in the past that will allow you to be an effective representative of Oklahoma in D.C.?
Well, I started a nonprofit last year called the Liberty Literature Foundation. The idea is just to get books that promote free markets and liberty out in front of people. People read what is in front of them, so I'm going to put it in front of them and see if they'll read it. It's kind of an experiment. I haven't been doing this a long time, but it's an idea. I ran for city council in 2014, and I guess at the time I wasn't a Republican, I was a Libertarian. I'd been a Republican before, but I got tired of the kind of Republicans that support Susan Collins and take donations from, people that have transgender hospitals or whatever. I'm just sick of that. Well, I was then, I am now, but back then it seemed like the best thing to do was to just leave. And I've seen the reforms in the party on the state level, and so I've come back in. That happened when I worked on the Dusty Devers campaign last summer, and so I've helped with that. And of course we, excuse me. Of course we worked pretty hard for Ron Paul in 07 and 08, and then again in 2011 and 2012. I was busy working, but if I can take credit from what my wife did, my wife was a delegate at state convention for Ron Paul. So we're in the fight. We've always been in the fight, and we're going to stay in the fight.
Well, this is my first foray into politics. However, having been in the government as a career for 27 years and having been the recipient, of the orders from the government, I talked with the people that would come in, and I talked with them for, a career. And you have a different perspective. Perhaps you're not a businessman, but you're the person having to to put up with and have to work with what the government has given you, and you kind of begin to understand what they can do better, as opposed to, you know, telling you what to do. They need to come and tell them. They need to come to the worker and talk to the worker and find out what is best and what needs to be done. But all that time, I had been in Carnegie for 20 years. I had never had anybody from any kind of a government agency come and ask me, as the director of that particular clinic, you know, what do I need, and what else what can they come up with? So having been on that end of it, I believe I've gotten enough of an understanding of what has to be done, what has to be passed, what people can do with, and what happens when you have too much money, and then they come to you. They did come to me once and say, you got to spend the money or we're going to take it away. So you've heard that before. So there needs to be a balance between overtaxing the people and undertaxing the people, and making sure that the folks that are getting the benefit of it get the benefit of it, as opposed to always running out. So I don't have that much experience as far as that goes, but I have the experience to know what we need.
Well, there is no one on this stage, or hardly anyone in the country, that has done more to advance a cause for the Republican Party and making sure that we attack the real cause of what we see, the issues that we have in this nation, with President Joe Biden, more than Tom Cole. He's the only one, based on FEC filings, that has supported the president there financially. He has financially supported those that are looking to be the majority makers. Yeah, we have a lot. We'll have a great discussion on ideas up here, on what we need to do to put our nation back on the right track. But we can't accomplish that unless we have the majority in the House and the majority in the Senate, as well as the presidency of the United States. And so there is no one that has worked harder on behalf of President Trump, a Republican House majority, and hopefully, and I think we will get a House or a Senate majority this fall, than Tom Cole. Thank you.
All right, so now we have some policy questions. Well, the first one will be for Mr. Bondar. We'll talk a little about immigration and the border, something that's kind of affected Oklahoma eventually as people come up from Texas. So what solutions do you support reforming the failed immigration policies of President Biden, both legal immigration and illegal immigration?
Yeah, great question. It's $1 million question. You know, I think we're all insulted. I think everybody's just had it up to here with immigration, because flat out we've been lied to over and over and over again. They keep telling us we don't have enough money to solve immigration. Well, you know what? We don't have enough money to not solve immigration. Yet we can go around and we can dole out $200 and some billion over here and send it over all over the place, because why? That's money that the politicians want to spend. So I would say our immigration policy really is not a crisis. It's negligence, or it's manufactured. We could solve this immigration policy in a fat hurry if we wanted to. But the problem is we're being sold out by our existing leaders. Everybody knows it and everybody's fed up with it. And one solution would be, hey, we're not going to spend any more money. We're going to have a backbone, and we're going to say, no, we're not going to approve anything until we can get some consensus on immigration. And you know, the person that does that is going to be a hero, but that takes a little bit of guts. So that's what we need to do, is we need to send somebody to Washington that's going to have the courage to say, there is a real problem. We understand that the establishment doesn't want to solve it. And guess what? I'm not going to just go along with the establishment. I'm going to do something about it. Thank you.
Yes. So, I mean, frankly, I can tell you about all that I would do, but just to level with you and be honest, I think we have the laws on the books. I think we need somebody in the White House that will handle it and enforce the law. So, you know, well, I know Trump has his problems. He's terrible at picking people. Let's face it. He picked Mike Pence. He picked Giuliani, then he picked Michael Cohen, He picked that woman. He let Fauci run around and destroy everything. He's not very good at picking out the right people, and we've seen that lately too. But I do believe that if we go ahead and vote for Trump, he'll fix the border. I think he'll do a lot of good. He's not good at picking good people, but he is good at making good policy choices.
When it comes to immigration and our border problems that we're having, they actually were solved in the sense that by executive order. When Trump first came in, if you recall, he tried to have an emergency border bill, and but everybody most of the Republicans voted against it, and most of the Democrats voted for it in the House, but it didn't pass in the Senate. So the only thing that the president could do at that point was come up with his own executive order, which was 13767 in January 17, and then the border was closed. So he can do it, and we can do it, but it's the leaders, the Republicans and Democrats alike, but hopefully they're growing a backbone, and we can stop it by voting, having someone who will vote for it, because our representative voted against another House bill, that Trump wanted to close the border. So we've had some mess ups on who's been voting for what, and I think our representative may have let us down a couple of times, but he did come through in a couple others. So I but we need someone that'll vote conservative all the time for the next 2 to 4 years, so we can stop all the problems that we're having with the border. And I believe in closing the border completely and not letting anybody else in. I'm sorry about that. The border is involved. The border is involved in a tripartite thing. It's not just, Mexico. The big dealers in the border is China, and they're bringing across people that are starting their own. You've heard of it already. They have their own police stations, but they have more than that. So Trump has been way ahead of the curve in identifying China, and we got to stick with that. Thank you.
Thank you. You're right on time. Mr. Chance.
We may need some batteries. I'm getting a red light on this one too. So Congressman Cole has been a champion on working to secure this border. Under President Trump, they did fund the wall. We saw immigration, or illegal immigration, start to go down, finally, just due to Remain in Mexico policies, as well as stopping the crazy asylum claims that were coming in. Now, President Biden owns this. He's the arsonist that lit this on fire. He had 90 different executive orders when he first took office overturning what Trump did. And that's why President Trump knows that when he takes office in November, this is part of why he endorsed Congressman Cole, is he knows Congressman Cole is going to be there on day one to help solve this issue. Congressman Cole voted yes on H.R. 2, which is the most conservative border security bill in our nation's history. It addresses the issues that Trump did and make them law permanent. Unfortunately, Chuck Schumer in the Senate won't hear the bill, and unfortunately, Joe Biden, who set the border on fire, won't sign it. But we are working every single day, and I think we see the pressure is really taking a toll on President Biden. He just did some pro forma actions this week. We know it's not enough, and we also know that it was Joe Biden who, again, was the arsonist that lit the border on fire. And with Congressman Cole and President Donald Trump, we're going to get the border fixed.
Mr. Hankins.
Regarding the border and immigration, basically we're at a point where we're going to need to scrap our current asylum laws because it's being abused. There is no cap on the number of people that can come to this country and claim asylum. I mean, at a minimum, we have to have a cap. There's a finite number of people we can absorb into our country and integrate them in a way that does not place an undue burden on taxpayers. Immigration should only serve our nation. It is not our job to let everyone in the world move here and to compete with them directly. Life is competition. I believe through cooperation, it can be far more enjoyable and far more beneficial to everyone, but we cannot do it in a cutthroat competition way where we flood this country with low-skilled workers that make it more difficult for people to find a footing. So for me, it's shut down the asylum as it stands. A common sense approach would be definitely a cap. I would argue that we need to basically have Congress pass blocks and say, oh, look, there's a situation, we can take in 100,000 people from this area. Now, it really doesn't make sense for us to allow asylum for anyone not connected to our country. So if you're not in Canada, you're not in Mexico, there's a country next to you. Go there, seek asylum. Don't come to America in droves. And the other thing, too, about immigration is this country was founded by immigrants, but there was a wildly different situation then. For starters, you had to figure out how to get here. You might be on a boat for 3 months, maybe die. So there was real risk. Now there's people, literally Joe Biden's flying in hundreds of thousands of people. Huge problem, but again, real solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's talk about a little bit about the economy. What would you do to fight inflation and address the national debt as well as excessive spending? If you are proposing spending cuts or tax increases, be specific on what you would do to address these issues. We're going to start with Mr. Hayes.
All right, so this is why I'm running. This is it. Wow. Yeah, so we can cut spending, and that's good. We can roll things back. We talked about that. I talked about that in my introduction. But the major issue there that's plaguing our market, our economy, is our money. Our money is not sound. It's printed out of thin air. You know, when I came back in the party, they gave me the Republican Party platform to look over. And I looked it over, I said, yeah, this is good stuff. We want to audit the Fed, abolish the income tax. There's some stuff on there that, you know, I'll give you an example. It says, we want to retain in God we trust on our money. Well, that's nice, but I want godly money. I want money that is something and isn't controlled by a government or a private institution. Nobody controls gold. It's just gold. And that's what our money should be, and so that it can't be manipulated, so we don't have these boom-bust business cycles where the interest rate is artificially set too low and you have an influx of business going into a sector, and then the bottom falls out because it was never real. We had that in the 08 housing crash, if you remember that. We had it in the tech crash. We have it in these iterations going all the way back to the Great Depression, and really before that, there was one in 1819 that's interesting to look at. But, you know, we need to abolish the Federal Reserve. That's number one. Money is the lifeblood of our economy. And if the money's not good, your economy's not going to be good either. So we need to fix that problem.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Yes. Mr. Hayes.
I thought you were done.
Oh, I was.
Okay.
You said thank you to me.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Just make sure your mic is on and speak into it, please.
Yes, sir. Inflation is basically what's killing us at the moment. And according to Steve Forbes, there are problems with monetary inflation and non-monetary inflation. Monetary is more of a weakening dollar, and non-monetary is when prices are going sky high because of higher taxes and a decreased supply chains. So, and the most important thing, that the Fed decides that they want to mess up and try to change things by controlling the interest rate, which is what they can't do, which is why there's having troubles now, because so many banks are having to refund some of their loans at a higher rate now. So things are beginning to fall apart because of the Fed trying to manipulate interest rates. And so one of the most important things is to get back to more of a gold standard than anything else. So, and that's what I would be more interested in, is changing the Fed to be less political and making sure that we have lower taxes, because that's what Trump did, and that's what's going to keep us ahead of the game, is
is the people being able to spend their own money instead of the government spending their own money.
Allow me to interrupt
Thank
a
you.
moment.
Yes,
Please
sir.
try not to push the on-off button when you've got your microphone.
It's a battery.
Is it showing battery? Showing red flash.
Here, you can swap mics with me.
I won't know who you're talking to.
Okay. I'll speak loud. Mr. Chance?
All right. Well, when it comes to inflation and budgets, I think it's important to have a quick history lesson here. Under Donald Trump, under President Donald Trump, back during his administration, as well as when the congressman was there, we had inflation under 2%, and we were coming out of the pandemic. Well, transition over to a Biden administration that lit our inflation on fire with a $1.4 trillion American Rescue Plan, a Inflation Reduction Act, which was really just a program to help green energy, like solar panel projects from China, and additionally you had other projects that the Biden administration pushed through with a Democratic majority. Tom Cole voted no on each and every one of those. He voted no. So did the rest of the Republican delegation. Now skip over to where we're at currently under a House majority with Republicans. Tom Cole voted to cut the budget by $2.1 trillion over the next several years. Is currently working to cut Biden's budget by 6% on domestic spending outside of Homeland Security and veterans, and also for defense. And he is working every day to make sure that we get that under control. Now, it's also important to talk about, okay, on our budget, what are we looking at? The discretionary spending that is part of your appropriations bills every single year only account for about 28%. And so then you take out defense, which is 15% of that. So you're looking at 13% being in non-defense related discretionary. Tom Cole is working every day to make sure that we limit the amount of dollars that go to programs that just aren't working and that should be left for taking care of our veterans and the obligations that taxpayers deserve. Now for the rest of that, what are we looking at? Social Security, Medicare, and servicing on the debt. Well, Tom Cole has a plan for that and has introduced a bill and is working every day to make sure we get all of this under control. Thank you.
Mr. Jenkins?
As far as reducing inflation, definitely we've got to cut the deficit spending, close down the Fed. There's no reason that they should be deciding, what our interest rate is or printing money and buying up toxic assets and putting them on our books. So aside from that, inflation is really, in large part, we can solve inflation with productivity. If we invest in the right things, figure out how to make things more productive, more affordable, at the same time ensure there's ample competition in markets, because I'm sure as many of you have felt, there seems like, there's little sparse competition out there, and then certain businesses can kind of just raise their prices at their own discretion. And only until you stop buying from them will they ever consider lowering those prices. Aside from that, I think we could make some tax law changes so that companies that are taking loans to pay dividends or do stock buybacks are penalized through the tax code, because those things create an upward pressure on prices, because the only way you can pay down debts is if you make more money typically next year than you did this year, because you usually can't control your costs that well. So again, it's one of those things where it's a small thing, but I think there's a lot of small areas that are pretty obvious. For starters, no money for Ukraine. So there's $200 billion right there. I saved you, but I can't get it back. But definitely there'll be not another dime that goes to them under my watch. At least not from my vote. And yeah, there's a lot of areas you could talk about with inflation, but we have got to make it affordable to have a good life in this country. It was once, and somehow, through the actions of government, they've stopped it. But we can fix it.
Well, it's not affordable anymore because we have a 20% silent tax in addition to all the taxes we've been paying. And it takes you almost 5-6 months of the year before you actually can clear a dollar after you pay your taxes. And then we got whacked with a 20% tax, which is called inflation. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the definition of inflation, but inflation is too many dollars chasing too few goods. And let me tell you, when there was lockdowns down in COVID, there wasn't a lot of goods moving. But what did they do? They pumped the money out hand over fist. So what happened? It was like dumping gasoline on a brush fire and letting it go. We created inflation, and if you can't tell me that these people in our government didn't know what they're doing. I talked earlier about trust. This is another example. Should we trust our current leaders? We just lost 20%. Senior citizens who've been working their entire lives, saving on a monetary system based on a dollar that was worth this. You just got 21%, 22% of your dollar. You just lost it because of the decisions of our elected officials. As far as I'm concerned, pretty much all of them need to go because they're not working for the American people. And that's a fact. And number two, how would I do it differently? We haven't had a budget. I'm not even talking about a real budget. I'm talking about getting off a continuous resolution. We haven't had that since 2015. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people in Congress who have been around since more than 2015. But the point is that's almost a decade that we haven't had a real budget. What's the solution? How about some accountability? I say no salaries for anybody in Congress until we have a real budget passed. Suspend the salaries, and the budgets are going to get fixed. Thank you.
Oops, thank you. Oops. All right, now we're going to move on to foreign policy.
No applause, please.
All right, so we'll start with Mr. Harris. What country do you feel is the biggest threat to national security? And if you were emperor for the day, what foreign policy would you implement?
Well, I believe that it's a tripartite problem. I don't think but the major part of it is like Trump was talking about. He says it's China. Now, but China works in cahoots with Iran, and then there's a Russia. So it's kind of a tripartite type thing. So what happens is it started back with Obama, Biden, and then Trump was able to control it. And then when Biden came in, he released everything again, stopped our drilling, and increased everything for Tehran. So therefore, it kind of came back again. So what they started with Obama was a deal. I don't know if you remember, it was called the deal. That's what it was called. But it was the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and what happened was that's when if you recall, the $150 billion or $150 million worth of cash that was sent over on the planes at night, if you remember that. Well, that was kind of the kickstart of it. And then what they were trying to do was get Iran not to produce any more nuclear fuel. So, but that particular deal involved other people too, the multinational corporations, because as Iran stopped doing with the nuclear fuel, the other countries were allowed to go ahead and go back into Iran and beginning to work with them again. And that was UK, China, France, Germany, and of course us. So the floodgates, thanks to Obama and Biden, just opened up, and Iran was able to begin to fund other things like Hamas and our other problems. So I believe the main problem to start with is with China, and to stop it at that point. And that basically stops the tripartite at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chance.
Yes. Well, with all the dangers that we see in this world today, again, we get back to the main perpetrator of who's made this world unsafe, and that is President Joe Biden. With his disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, it let the rest of the world know that America looks weak. I mean, we've seen not only Russia take advantage of that, and Russia also took obviously advantage of Obama back in 2014 when they took Crimea. We see that Iran's on the move with their partners in Hamas and Hezbollah and their other those in Yemen. We see China on the move with wanting to pressure the Taiwan Strait again. It all is because of the weakness shown from this administration. Now, Tom Cole and President Donald Trump both believe in peace through strength. Not appeasement, but peace through strength. And that's what he's working every day to make sure now that we exhibit. Now, if you look at, I think Israel is a great example. What we saw on October 7th was an absolute travesty. And Tom Cole has stood up for the nation of Israel and will continue to do so, enforcing the Biden administration to get the weapons that Israel needs to make sure that they can defend themselves from an existential threat on Hamas, Hezbollah, and other actors from Iran. And going forward, we do see an unlimited partnership between them, those three countries, and North Korea. And we need somebody like President Donald Trump, as well as Congressman Tom Cole, that makes sure that we invest where we need to keep our country strong and not let this new American century go to waste. Thank you.
Regarding national security, the greatest threat, I would say China's probably by far the greatest national security threat. I don't see them as, a threat in a hot war. I think the United States has far superior technology. Even the things we know about and the quality of China's military, I think it'd be a clear-cut decision short of a nuclear exchange. Again, I think we've got countermeasures for that. But the real problem is what we're facing is the operatives that China has sent here that have come through our open border. There's been at least 3 terrorist attacks on military bases in the United States. I believe they were extremist Muslims, so not Chinese, but the Chinese definitely cannot be trusted. And unfortunately for Chinese nationals, China has no qualms about threatening every person in your family, so you essentially will end up doing what they want, or they're going to kill your family. So it's a pretty strong lever for most people. So I think the Biden administration, the deep state that have allowed this flood of illegal aliens, unvetted people into our country will be the greatest threat that we face. And I don't see it slowing down. And we need a comprehensive plan to identify every person that is coming to this country illegally and process them and deport them. So if we don't do that, it's not going to matter. They'll just take us down from within. It doesn't take, simple question, how many people does it take to control one person 24 hours a day? It's a very non-sustainable way. We can barely do it in prisons, and these people are loose in our communities doing no telling what. So watch out for that. We have to address it. Thank you.
Mr. Bondar?
So I would say the greatest threat to our security within this country is not China, it's not Russia, it's not North Korea. It's our own leadership. It's our own leadership that continues to make bad decisions time after time again, where we literally shoot ourselves in the foot and poison ourselves and poison our country almost deliberately. Might I remind us about Afghanistan, where we left how many billions, hundreds of billions of dollars? We just left it there. I'm just amazed that this is just tolerated in this country, and there's not more accountability. Meanwhile, I'm going to go back to something I said earlier, and we don't have enough money. We're being told we don't have enough money to close the border. Yet, seems like there's plenty of countries that are always looking for us to provide them weapons, yet we leave with the enemy hundreds of billions of dollars just so we can arm our enemy and we don't sell it. We've already had all this equipment in Afghanistan. I would have liked to have seen our leaders say, here's an idea, let's get it out of there so we don't arm the enemy, and let's sell it to Israel, or let's sell it and let's make some money because it's taxpayer dollars. I'm just going to say this. Our country is going to always have 2 political parties. You want to know why? Because I'm hearing a lot of it tonight. It's so one can always blame the other, and we don't have any accountability within this country. It's this guy's fault. No, it's this guy's fault. Gosh darn it, we got to have leaders that are going to do something.
I'm not supposed to applaud, so I won't. But I will put just a little bit of a different flavor on that. We're concerned about national security, What about our freedoms? We used to fight wars for our freedoms. You know, the Revolution, War of 1812, those were serious. We haven't fought a war like that since then, right? You know, what's the threat to our liberty? It's not China. China isn't spying. Well, they might be spying. I don't know about that. But the U.S. government is doing it too, all right? I will say this, China is not a threat to your free speech. It's our Congress. You know, China's not taking your money. That's Congress. They're taxing you. They're ruining the money. Let's go back to that. The biggest thing for peace is to have sound money, because these wars, all these wars are fought on money that's printed off the printing press. Because without that, let me tell you what, during Vietnam, there was a bunch of hippies out there, smelly, dirty hippies protesting the war. But if they had actually taxed you for that war instead of printing off money and so that you don't see it, and by the way, I got to speak to this. It's not that the money's printed off and the next day prices skyrocket. That's not how it works. It takes time for the money to filter in and go through the economy. And right now, we're only seeing the inflation that happened during 2020 when they were handing out checks to everybody and the PPP loans and all that. We haven't felt the effects of the Inflation Reduction Act yet. That's going to come next year and the year after. But you know, war is the health of the state, and war they can't do war without the central bank.
Thank you. All right, we're talking about a state issue. All right, so we're back to Mr. Chance. The McGirt decision has had a major impact on criminal prosecutions in Oklahoma. What do you feel as a congressman you can do about it, and how can it be addressed?
Sure. Well, I think it's important to talk about this. Well, first, let me start with this. Jim C. McGirt, the congressman, feels should have spent far longer in jail, and honestly, he wishes that, and really would have preferred he got the death penalty for his actions. However, let's look at what's going on here. So the McGirt decision was decided by the Supreme Court, and there's been a lot of reference to what we see as an amicus brief on behalf of the congressman. Now, the congressman joined several other Oklahomans in this amicus brief, just explaining what happens or what the relationship is between states and tribes when it comes to compacts. And we do compacts for everything from tobacco to tags, et cetera. That's all it went into. It was not a decision on whether or not that Tom Cole feels that Jim C. McGirt should be out of prison. So any discussion saying so is completely bogus and ridiculous. Now, however, when it comes to addressing McGirt, though, no one's done more than Congressman Cole to address some of the issues that we've seen here in the state. There's been tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars put into Oklahoma to help federal courts adjust to this, with more U.S. Marshals, with more court support staff, as well as more judges to adjudicate these cases. Oklahomans know what's going on here. Additionally, when it comes to solving the issue in general, Congressman Cole also authored up a bill to allow tribes to compact with the state, which they already do on a multitude of other things. So that way Oklahomans are getting together and solving Oklahoma issues here. And he'll continue to fight for that. And I think everybody would agree here today that Oklahomans solving Oklahoma issues is more important than the federal government deciding to dictate them. Thank you.
Yes, so on that issue, I think it's clear that as Oklahomans, if something were to happen to you or your family, you would want Oklahoma courts to preside over those cases. Specifically, you wouldn't want a binded appointed federal judge or prosecutor to basically dismiss the charges where someone had wronged your family. So I think that the common sense thing to do would be to take the same actions we did with the other territories to allow the state to have jurisdiction over those criminal cases. I don't see any other way where you can say, you live in Oklahoma, give me your tax dollars. Nah, good luck to you getting justice in a rigged federal court system. And maybe today it's not that bad, but Donald Trump has shown us that it may not be long for all of us until there is no justice. So that's how I think we should handle that case.
So when I was a boy growing up, my dad used to say, that's close enough for government work. You ever hear that? The problem with what I'm hearing right now is, that's close enough for government work. Well, to the victims that are involved in this McGirt situation, I don't think it's good enough to say that's close enough for government work. To the parents, and I have 2 kids, and a lot of people have kids, to say this guy was supposed to spend 500 years of his life behind bars for heinous acts, and he was released within the last couple weeks, and now he's out. And these people that once they do these acts, it isn't like robbing a bank and it's like, oops, I got caught, I'll be good now. This is something that these people can't control. Okay, we all know this. Let's stop lying to ourselves. And again, let's take some accountability. It is not good enough to say, well, that's close enough for government work. We had this big bill, and some of the things in the bill were good, but yeah, some of them weren't. That's not good government, people. It's about having everything in the bill be appropriate and not having a miscarriage of justice and saying, well, I tried. Because what's going to happen to the next family if this guy does the same thing to them? Who's going to look them in the eye and say, yeah, I'm sorry, we let him out? For me, this whole situation, I will recognize that there were good things that probably happened in the bill. I will, that's great. But it's not okay to say it's close enough for government work. That's bad government.
To finish my sentence on that last question, I was talking about the hippies. If you had to be taxed to fund the wars directly, you would be out there protesting with them, and I would be too, okay? To the McGirt decision, I don't know as a congressman at the Capitol what I could do about it, except to talk about it and try to remind people of our history. The constitutionality of our laws and our treaties and so forth isn't for the Supreme Court to decide. They apportion that to themselves, I believe in Madison versus Marlboro, or Mulberry, Mulberry, I call it Marlboro. Anyway, you know, they took that right for themselves, but it was never the intention. Let me tell you what, Madison had a part to play in writing the Constitution. And in 1798, when the Alien and Sedition laws came down the pike under the Adams administration, Madison didn't sit on his hands and wait for the court to give the wrong decision the first time and then another 50 years to get it right like we did Roe v. Wade. You know what Madison did? He nullified it in Virginia. He led the Virginia State House, and they nullified that rotten federal law, and they said, we're not going to abide by it. We're a sovereign state, and we disagree. And this is how we're going to do it, and you can pound sand. And that's what I think we ought to do, is that the state ought to grow a backbone, have some sovereignty, and basically ignore the court. The court doesn't have the kind of standing that everybody acts like they do. We're not a republic if we have the majority of 9 men in black robes to decide all these issues for us. It's not for them, it's for the states and for the people.
Yes, sir. To look at the McGirt decision from here it may cause you to miss exactly what might be happening, because it's a symptom more of anything else. The problem is the United States government hasn't solved the issue of sovereignty, but the founders did. The founders said that the people have the sovereignty, but then the people can give it to the government. And then the government can also be the state government. So in this country, there are, in fact, 2 sovereigns. and that would be the government, the United States government, and your state government. That is it. But when you have other groups of people decide that they have sovereignty, we didn't give them that sovereignty, so therefore they can't have it. So our government shouldn't be talking to another entity as if they were another sovereign entity. They are not, okay? There are only two. So my take on that is that we have to have people that are in the Congress that will write the law that will remind the court that there are only two sovereigns. The court is only going to rule on things that the lawmakers make. So therefore, the lawmakers have to decide that they're going to go back to the Constitution and make it so that there are only two sovereigns in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll start with Mr. Hankins on this question. Chinese nationals are buying up large portions of land in Oklahoma, around 300,000 acres according to state officials, and across the nation. What do you see as the potential problems that this causes, and what solutions do you propose?
I think the problems are pretty obvious. Every Chinese national essentially is under the thumb of the CCP. That means anything the CCP thinks up, they're basically forced to facilitate or allow to happen. So the solution really is reciprocity. You can't own land in China. That means Chinese people can't own land here. And it may sound harsh, but China shouldn't be such a terrible place run by the CCP. If they wanted a free, fair world, then they should act that way. They don't treat their own citizens that way. They definitely don't treat foreigners that way. We cannot allow them to take advantage of our decency and, us being the greatest country in the world. It's foolish. It's nonsense. You wouldn't do it in your own home. There's no reason we should allow it here. And it can be hard because the people that probably sold those 300,000 acres probably got paid handsomely. But we cannot exchange our freedoms or our sovereignty or our general way of life for just a little bit more money. So, I mean, I think it's obvious. Here's the sad part. Why is it even an issue? How did anyone not see this happening? Oh, well, it's because government constantly keeps you distracted with things that don't matter so they cannot do the things that do. So, yeah.
So let me get this straight. We got millions and millions and millions of people coming here with nothing that we all have to support. And our benefits, we're talking about losing Social Security or cutting it. Veterans are in a worse spot. We're all getting worse off because of immigration, because people are coming here with nothing. And then on the other side of the sandwich, we got Chinese that are buying our Oklahoma farm and land out from underneath us. So we're getting the best of both worlds, aren't we, from our leaders? Pretty soon, we're not going to be able to be, I don't know, what are we going to be, in a quasi-feudal system? We're going to be like indentured servants that are just minions here in this country? Well, that's not good government, is it? I'm not happy with it. Point is, our government is more than happy on April 12th. They're more than happy to spy on you. Maybe we have a veteran in here that has a AR-15 or something, and he's on a list. Well, guess what? Now everybody in here is associated with them, and who knows? Maybe under our FISA Act, the government can now monitor your banking, monitor all your transactions, what you're looking at. That's what our government does to us. But yet, they're just not able to figure out how to break up this Chinese land deal. They just can't figure it out. People, it goes back to trust. It goes back to decaying from the inside out. You got a choice coming up. That's all I'll say.
I don't disagree that it's a problem, but I believe in the Constitution. And the way I read the 10th Amendment is that I don't see where the federal government has the right to prohibit who can and can't buy land. Fortunately, we live in a great state, and the Oklahoma legislature has handled this issue. I believe it's passed both houses. I don't think that the governor has signed it yet, but I believe he will, that prevents foreign governments from buying Oklahoma land. So Oklahoma's got it under control. Oh, why don't I mention this since I have some spare minutes? The idea that government can be good. I agree with Thomas Paine. I think that government at its best is still an evil. That's not what he says. He says it's a necessary evil. But let's get down to it. It's an evil. Is that you're controlling other people, you're curtailing their liberties, you're taking their money without their consent. Governments are by their very nature bad. That's what they do. They do bad things. That's why the founders wanted government to be as small as possible. And so our job is to bind it, to tie it down, to chain it, and where it spills out of its proper banks, to eliminate it. And that's my mindset. I don't think that we can have a good government. I think it's always going to be rotten, and that's why we need to make it as small as it can be.
Well, I believe in the argument about reciprocity. If we can't buy their land, they can't buy our land. But whether it's, I believe that our state is doing a fair enough job to stop that. But I believe we could also use help on the federal level, you know, to organize that, because there are some times that the state may mix something up, and then hopefully the government will get it. You know, but we have to know what the enemy is doing and why they're doing it. So there's our thing. There are organizations from China. When I told you that I felt the worst enemy was China. There's the PLA, which is the People's Liberation Army. It's not the PLO. It's the PLA. Then there's the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. Then there is the Organization for Black Struggle, OBS, and then there's the Party for Socialism and Liberalism. Those things are funded by China, and they're run by Americans who have basically given themselves over to Mao and Marxism and communism. And they're operating here using money from China. You know, and when you see the riots that you've seen, like at Ferguson, people got confused for a while, because there was all of a sudden there were two BLMs. Well, one BLM went bust, but the other one didn't. The one that did not go bust was the one that's being funded by China. So we have to decide that if China is going to be a part of anybody's state, the state government has to stop it. They shouldn't be allowed to buy any land here, and they shouldn't be able to organize here either. Thank you.
All right, well, that gets us to about 8:15, so we're doing our...
Scott didn't get a chance to answer that question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we started you. Apologize, Scott.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, in regards to what's going on with Chinese and other outside entities using or buying up farmland or getting involved in our agriculture system at all, you know, whether it's a food chain or et cetera, Congressman Cole has actually taken a lot of strides here. In regards to the last appropriations bill, they have more money for the infrastructure to keep track of this, as well as adding it to what they call CFIUS, which looks at foreign transactions, and if there's a national security interest, making sure to step in and prevent those sales. In conjunction with what's going on in Oklahoma with them clamping down on foreign ownership of land, I will tell you, and we're doing great work and doing more and more and more to make sure that we get there. The way that a lot of the Chinese and other bad actors are able to gain access to some of this is they hide behind LLCs, and they come in and they have a American that they pay to be the registrant on that. And so, so the legislature has done a good job to prevent some of those things. Congress is going to continue to work on that. That's actually something that is very bipartisan when it comes to the work of the China Select Committee on making sure that we protect our nation, our food chain, when it comes to those foreign actors that want to harm us. And I think we can all agree that we certainly don't want those that want to harm us hiding behind LLCs and buying up Oklahoma land.
Okay, thank you for catching that, Gary. All right, we'll go into our closing statements. We'll start with Scott, 3 minutes.
All right. Well, today we've heard quite a bit. It's a pleasure to represent Congressman Cole here. And he is proud, again, to have earned the endorsement from President Trump for the third time running. He is proud to work on behalf of Oklahomans. He is proud to work on behalf of our military men and women. He secured them a pay raise in this last appropriations bill. He has always fought to make sure that we have additional missions at Fort Sill and Tinker, and as well as taking care of our veterans. Now, we've certainly heard a discussion on whether the services are there, but Congressman Cole, when it comes to his district office, which, by the way, it's in Ada. I know it's sometimes hard to find on a map, but our office works on behalf of those veterans and other constituents day in and day out, and the congressman's so proud of what he does on behalf of Oklahomans. And when it comes time to June 18th, don't take it from myself, take it from President Donald Trump, that Tom Cole is the one that we should choose on your ballot, and make sure that we reelect him. So that way we can overturn all the bad decisions and the crises from President Joe Biden and move this country forward. Thank you.
When it comes to important things and doing the right thing, I don't believe in going along to get along. I think there's a line, and I think you hold that line with everything you've got. And if I'm your representative, I will be relentless in protecting your freedoms and your tax dollars. I will treat them as if they are my own money, and I will not squander them on pointless foreign wars or endless handouts at your expense. I think we have to understand that there are bad actors in Congress, there's bad actors within the deep state, and we cannot pretend that we can go up there and just find some common ground with these people. I think we have to draw the line and we have to hold it, and if that means that the government shuts down because we can't secure the border, we can't stop the flood of illegal aliens, then that's what has to happen. And if we don't have a representative that's willing to do that, I shudder to think at the state of affairs of our country in the next few years. Thank you.
When we first started tonight, we all put our hand on our chest and we pledged to the flag. And I'd like to say that there is still hope for this country, but it's for a limited time only. I really believe that. We can't keep going down the same road in the same direction and pointing fingers back at one party, blaming the other party, and so on and so forth. People need solutions, and this country is headed off a cliff financially. It is time that we act. You know, it won't be very long. June 18th will be here right around the corner, and you're going to have to make a decision. And I think the decision is really simple. If you like the way the country's going, if you're confident in the leaders, if you like the way your leaders are voting, it's simple. Stick with what you got. Reward them for what they've been doing. They've earned it. But if you think the country is going in the wrong direction, if you think it's time for maybe a change, if you think that America needs to find its values and America needs to reconnect with the Constitution and the principles of serving the people, then I would encourage you to make a vote for change. Because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the results to change. Thank you.
All right, well, that went by fast. I didn't even get to talk about January 6th and the idea of jury nullification, but ask me about it. It's really important. But I'll wrap up. I have kind of 4 ideas and 4 issues to advance free markets, to stand on the Republican Party platform, something that hasn't been done in a very long time in D.C., to defend the Constitution, and to promote state sovereignty, because that's the idea. We're not a nation. France is a nation. We're not like them. We're a union. We're a union of sovereign states. And then, we want to end the Fed, roll back spending, abolish the income tax, and secure the border. Those are the ideas. And to my friend's point, we are the Roman Republic. The Roman Republic fell because its military was spread too thin and because its money was bad. They debased the currency and they spread their military out too thin. And what have we been doing over the last 20 years? If we wanted to do what Rome did, we couldn't have done a better job. We've got to stop. And I agree. I think that we are, we might be too far gone. That's why I'm running now. My wife wanted me to wait until I was a millionaire to run. And I said, honey, we don't have that kind of time. So here I am. By the way, let me close out with this. I like to take a free market approach to things. So I'm not going to tell you that I'm the best and the only candidate. I think there's 4 qualified candidates up here. I think there's one that's a train wreck.
I hope that ain't me.
You'll pass. You'll be all right.
I think the Republican Party has its difficulties because it's losing its way, for one thing. But the Democrats, you could say, the good thing about the Democrats is they stick together, and the bad thing about the Democrats is they stick together. But the thing about the Republican Party is there seems to be a division that's growing between the conservatives and the ones that want to be what I call the uniparty. And they will vote with, the Democrats. And as I said before, I think that's basically the problem why we're so far to the left, is we have uniparty members that are voting with the Democrats, and instead of voting with the conservatives and staying true to the conservative base. So as a non-politician, as I said, I've been able to evaluate, being a part of the government for most of my life. So I believe, though, that the best thing to do is to stay conservative, stay with those principles. Don't vote with the uniparty at all, ever. We need about 2 to 4 years, which is why I'm only going to be a 3-term candidate, and that's to bring us back to the center, so we can actually see where we are, and then we may be able to have someone that wants to have 4. But for me, a 3-term candidate is enough. But voting Republican, I'll stay with the Republican, I'll stay conservative, and so that's what I have. Let's go play ball.
All right. OU's up 2-1. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate your time. Like I said, I want to have some closing comments here from the County Chair, Mr. Barksdale, and then we'll open it up, and the audience can ask any questions you guys individually if you stick around.
Let's give Mr. Robert Castleberry a hand for moderating our event this evening. And I also want to express my sincere gratitude to each of the gentlemen attending here. As the chairman of the Cleveland County Republican Party, there's a fundamental principle in our county platform that was also passed unanimously at our state convention. And that has to do with the fundamental right of every human being, the right to life. Now, with the recent SCOTUS decision, and I know that you gentlemen have already mentioned your closing statements, but this is a significant question and it needs to be asked. With the recent SCOTUS decision in the Dobbs case, the Supreme Court has recently decided in the Dobbs case to overturn Roe versus Wade and return that to the rights of the state. Do you support leaving this in the hands and the responsibility of the states, or do you support Congress passing a defense of the right to life of every unborn American citizen? And since we left off with Mr. Harris, I'll start over there with Mr. Chance.
Absolutely. And so looking at the right to life issue, there's been no stronger champion on this issue than Tom Cole. There's a reason why he fights for the Hyde Amendment every single time on appropriations to prevent federal funding for abortions. There's a reason why he works on behalf on the Weldon Amendment as well, which prevents the government defunding those that protecting rights of conscience to not perform those. But and so when it comes to Tom Cole believes in the right to life, and also with the exception exceptions of rape, incest, and life of the mother. So we will see what comes up in Congress. But Congressman Cole will make sure to work with Donald Trump and President Donald Trump to ensure the life of the unborn going forward.
Yes, I have a pretty similar position. 3 exceptions: life of the mother, rape, and incest. The reality is that the right to life, with no exceptions, is not an opinion that the majority of Americans share. I believe that the answer is to help solve the issues that creates a situation where people think that that's an option they want to pursue. Ideally, we make advancements in medical care and crime and economic opportunity so that every pregnancy results in a healthy child and healthy mother. But I don't think that we're going to be able to force people to take this stance in places where they don't hold these values. And I think the answer is to persuade them and create the opportunities so that this is the default approach everyone wants to take, because the other would be more hassle. Because if you incentivize the behavior, you make it easy to do it, the right thing, that's the path that people take. It's why all of you are here today and you're not out robbing places, is because the good path is the easy path. We simply just need to make it more appealing by making it better, because today there are constraints and factors that people have to consider. And so it doesn't mean it's the right thing, it just means that's the reality we live in. And I think we've got to spend some effort addressing those things, because just talking about this isn't going to solve the problem.
This is a tough question, and I'll tell you why. Because it has a lot of different implications. On one hand, I categorically believe that abortions need to be illegal at all costs. On the other hand, I'm very concerned about the elimination of states' rights. Personally, I want the federal government out of the states. I want to redact and reduce the federal government as much as possible. So while in this situation, we have something that would be positive, I would be concerned that by doing this, it would get overturned and we would then have legal abortions across the board, across the whole United States. Secondarily, I don't like the idea of federal laws again in general. For example, gun control laws. It should be, again, decided by the states, absolutely not decided by the federal government. So we got to be very careful. And while I categorically agree with the abortion ban, I don't want to lose ground across the entire country, lose states' rights, and have that to become a slippery slope where then it becomes a precipice for us then losing gun rights and a host of other things. Let's keep the federal government at bay.
All right, well, I always forget to say something. So as you leave, there's books out there. There's a great book, What Has the Government Done to Our Money? Those are free. Grab one. Grab two. Send the second one to your congressman. On the question, I'm an abolitionist, guys. That's one of the many reasons I worked with Dusty Devers and helped him to get elected. The exception is for the mother's life only. I've looked at ultrasounds. I can't see why a child that was born of rape should be killed and another child shouldn't be killed. I can't see that on an ultrasound. I don't understand it. With all that being said, defend the Constitution. The 10th Amendment says what it says. It says all power is not given to the federal government nor prohibited to the states or reserved to the states and to the people. Abortion is clearly one of those things, so it's a state issue. The question of a federal amendment is a different thing. If we had an abolitionist amendment, then I would be for it, but I don't think that will ever, ever, ever happen.
Well, having never performed an abortion, I've been able to see a lot of other things that were pretty terrible about that particular procedure. So I am totally against it. As one gentleman said, I mean, it's very rare that you have the life of the mother involved in that. It's kind of a rare thing. My feeling about the whole thing is that the United States government had their chance and they blew it. Roe v. Wade was wrong and they didn't do it right. Okay, but the state, we can go and get the thing done at the state level. And the 10th Amendment, like he says, is basically that's our right. Now, if in fact in the future it can become like an amendment, but first it starts with the state. And if we can get another state and another state and another state, then we won't need the United States government to take care of it. Okay? Thank you.
All right, so last question, yes or no? If you are unsuccessful as a candidate, will you support whoever the nominee is out of the primary?
Absolutely.
As long as it's not Tom Cole?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Bondar?
Undecided.
Shankins?
I will never support any candidate that violates the Constitution.
Mr. Chance?
Tom Cole has always been willing to support Republican nominees in making sure we have a strong party.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, we're going to call it a night. Thank you, guys.
Richard.